The airport buzzed with the usual hum of travelers, some rushing through the terminal while others lingered in anticipation. Among the crowd was Marcus, a decorated soldier who had just returned from his latest deployment. His eyes, though tired, held a calm determination as he moved through the sea of people, the weight of his duffel bag a reminder of the sacrifices he had made for his country. Marcus had a ticket for first class, a small luxury he had gifted himself after months of sleeping on cold ground under foreign skies. It was his moment of respite, a brief escape from the chaos of war. As Marcus approached the gate, his grip on the ticket tightened. This flight wasn't just about comfort. It was about coming home, seeing his daughter smile, and feeling the warmth of his wife's embrace again. Each step he took, though slow and deliberate, brought him closer to that moment. The first-class lounge came into view, and Marcus felt a sense of relief. But just as he was about to relax, he noticed a woman seated by the window. Vanessa, her name would later be known, was dressed impeccably in a tailored suit, her hair perfectly coiffed. Everything about her screamed wealth and privilege. She glanced at Marcus, her eyes narrowing slightly as she scanned his uniform. Marcus, used to such stares, maintained his composure. He was no stranger to judgment, but as he approached the seat beside Vanessa, her body language changed. She shifted, her chin raised a fraction higher, and her gaze grew colder. "Excuse me," Marcus said politely, showing her his ticket. "I believe this is my seat." Vanessa didn't respond immediately. Instead, she scrutinized him, her expression unreadable at first, then slowly shifting into something more familiar, disdain. "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice dripping with condescension. "This is first class." Marcus felt a spark of anger ignite, but he kept his voice steady. "Yes, ma'am, I'm sure." She leaned back in her seat, tapping her fingers on the armrest. "I find that hard to believe," she muttered, her eyes sweeping over his uniform. "You must have made a mistake." Marcus's patience was wearing thin, but he knew this wasn't the place for a confrontation. "I didn't make a mistake," he replied firmly. "I have a first-class ticket." Vanessa's lips pressed into a thin line as she looked around, expecting someone to step in and confirm her assumptions, but no one did. The flight attendant approached, sensing the tension. "Is there a problem here?" she asked, her tone cautious. Vanessa seized the opportunity. "I think there's been a mistake," she said, waving a dismissive hand. "This gentleman claims this is his seat, but I doubt it." The flight attendant examined Marcus's ticket, her eyes widening slightly. "There's no mistake, ma'am. This is Mr. Marcus's seat." The revelation hit Vanessa hard, and for a moment her face betrayed her shock. But she quickly composed herself, muttering under her breath, "I just find that unusual." The flight attendant maintained her professionalism, offering a polite smile. "Mr. Marcus, if you'd like to take your seat, we'll be boarding shortly." As Marcus settled into his seat, he could feel the tension radiating from Vanessa. She shifted in her chair, her irritation palpable. Marcus tried to focus on the thought of home, but the sting of her words lingered, a reminder that despite his service, some people still saw him as less than. The plane taxied down the runway, and Marcus closed his eyes, trying to push the encounter out of his mind. Little did he know, someone had been watching from a few rows back. A man named Robert, a successful businessman known for his philanthropic efforts, had witnessed the entire scene unfold. Robert's eyes were sharp, his expression unreadable as he watched Marcus handle the situation with grace. He had seen people like Vanessa before, those who believed their status granted them superiority. It disgusted him. Robert had a choice to make. He could intervene, but something held him back. Perhaps it was the way Marcus had handled the situation, calm and composed. Robert recognized that strength. It was the kind of restraint that came from years of learning to navigate a world where one was judged based on appearances. For now, he remained silent, waiting for the right moment. The flight continued, and Marcus tried to ignore the whispers and glances from other passengers. He knew what they were thinking, some sympathetic, others judgmental. But he was no stranger to this. He had faced worse on the battlefield, and this was just another fight, albeit a quieter one. As the plane leveled off, Marcus felt a tap on his shoulder. It was the flight attendant again, her expression apologetic. "I'm so sorry for what happened earlier, sir," she whispered. "If there's anything I can do to make your flight more comfortable, please let me know." Marcus offered her a small smile. "Thank you, but it's fine. I've dealt with worse." Meanwhile, Vanessa, unable to let go of her indignation, continued to throw glances his way. Her posture remained stiff, her eyes blazing with a mixture of anger and humiliation. Marcus could feel the tension building again, but he refused to give her the satisfaction of reacting. In the rows behind them, Robert watched intently. His mind raced with possibilities, but he held his silence, observing Marcus's calm. This man, he thought, was something special. It wasn't just anyone who could maintain their dignity in the face of such blatant disrespect. Robert, who had spent his life fighting for justice and equality, felt a sense of admiration and a growing determination. He decided then and there that he would do something, but timing was everything. The plane finally landed, and as Marcus gathered his belongings, he felt a mix of relief and frustration. He just wanted to go home, to forget about Vanessa and her prejudiced assumptions. But as he stepped into the terminal, he heard a voice call out behind him. "Excuse me, Mr. Marcus." Turning around, he saw Robert approaching. Dressed casually, he carried himself with the quiet authority of someone accustomed to being in charge. "I was on the flight with you," Robert began. "I saw what happened." Marcus's guard went up, unsure of Robert's intentions. "Yes? I just wanted to say that I was impressed by how you handled the situation," Robert continued. "It showed a lot of character." Marcus, unaccustomed to such compliments, shrugged. "I've faced worse." Robert nodded, understanding. "I can imagine. But listen, I run a charity organization that supports veterans and minority-owned businesses. We could use someone like you, a leader with your resilience." Marcus was taken aback. He had expected a brief conversation, not an offer for collaboration. "What are you proposing?" he asked, cautious but intrigued. Robert's eyes lit up. "We're working on several initiatives: mentorship programs for veterans transitioning to civilian life, grants for minority entrepreneurs. I think you could make a real impact." As the two men walked through the terminal, Robert explained the charity's mission. The more Marcus listened, the more intrigued he became. This wasn't just another job offer, it was an opportunity to make a difference. But as he considered the offer, he felt conflicted. All he wanted was to get home, to leave the events of the day behind him. Yet something about Robert's sincerity gave him pause. "I'll think about it," Marcus finally said. Robert smiled, understanding the weight of the decision. "That's all I ask." As they parted ways, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that this chance encounter was leading him somewhere unexpected. Little did he know, this was just the beginning. The following day, Marcus arrived at the charity's office. The walls were covered with photos of veterans and small business owners, all smiling proudly. Robert greeted him with the same warmth and enthusiasm, introducing him to the team. As Marcus listened to their stories, he felt a sense of purpose rekindling within him. This was where he was meant to be. But Vanessa's story was far from over. Unbeknownst to Marcus, another passenger had recorded the incident on the flight. The video, which showed Vanessa's condescending remarks and Marcus's dignified response, quickly went viral. Within hours, the video spread like wildfire, sparking debates about race, privilege, and the importance of standing up against discrimination. Public outrage was swift, with people demanding accountability. Vanessa, who had remained oblivious to the storm brewing online, was blindsided when her employer, a prominent marketing firm, terminated her. The backlash was intense, and soon, Vanessa found herself facing consequences she never anticipated. Meanwhile, Marcus's story took on a life of its own. The charity seized the opportunity to launch a campaign centered around his message of dignity and resilience. As the world debated Vanessa's fate, Marcus rose as a symbol of hope, becoming a powerful voice for change. As Marcus settled into his new role at the charity, his life took on a renewed sense of purpose. He wasn't just a soldier anymore. He was a leader, a mentor, and an advocate for others who had walked similar paths. The organization, now gaining traction thanks to his involvement, began implementing mentorship programs that connected veterans with job opportunities and support networks. Marcus felt invigorated, realizing that the same strength and resilience he had honed in the military could now serve a greater good in the civilian world. But as his influence grew, so did the complexity of his journey. The video of the confrontation with Vanessa continued to circulate, amassing millions of views and sparking fierce debates on social media. Comments ranged from outrage at Vanessa's behavior to admiration for Marcus's calm demeanor. Major news outlets picked up the story, turning it into a nationwide discussion on race, privilege, and respect. Then came the twist Marcus hadn't anticipated. One day, as he was preparing for a speech at a local community center, Robert approached him with a thoughtful expression. "Marcus, there's something you should know." "What is it?" Marcus asked, noticing the unusual tension in Robert's voice. "Vanessa reached out," Robert revealed. "She wants to meet." Marcus's eyes narrowed, a mixture of surprise and skepticism flashing across his face. "What could she possibly want?" Robert sighed, folding his arms. "She claims she wants to apologize. She's lost everything, her job, her reputation. The backlash has been severe. She says she wants a chance to make things right." Marcus felt a wave of emotions flood through him. Anger, pity, confusion. A part of him thought, "Good, she deserves it for how she treated me." But another part, the one that had always believed in second chances, hesitated. "And you believe her?" "I don't know," Robert admitted, "but I believe in what we stand for. Change, growth, and redemption. If we're going to preach that, we have to be willing to offer it, even to someone like her." Marcus's mind raced. He had seen firsthand how people could change, how experiences could reshape them. But he also knew that not everyone was willing to do the work. "All right," he said after a pause, "I'll meet her, but I'm not making any promises." The meeting was arranged at a neutral, quiet coffee shop, far away from the cameras and attention that had plagued Vanessa for weeks. Marcus arrived first, feeling a strange mixture of anticipation and reluctance. He didn't know what to expect from Vanessa. Would she be genuinely remorseful, or would this be a superficial attempt to clear her name? Vanessa entered moments later, her appearance drastically different from the confident, polished woman Marcus remembered. She looked tired, her eyes puffy, her movements hesitant. She spotted Marcus and walked over, clutching her handbag as if it were a lifeline. "Marcus," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "thank you for agreeing to meet me." Marcus nodded, maintaining a neutral expression. "What do you want, Vanessa?" She took a deep breath, visibly gathering her courage. "I want to apologize. Truly. I didn't realize how my words, my actions, how they could affect someone like that. I was so ignorant." Marcus watched her closely, trying to gauge the sincerity in her eyes. "It's one thing to say that now, after everything has fallen apart for you. But why should I believe that you mean it?" Vanessa's hands trembled slightly as she placed them on the table. "Because I've had to confront what kind of person I was. Losing my job, seeing the backlash, hearing what people said about me. It opened my eyes. It made me realize how blind I've been to the privilege I've always had." There was a long silence as Marcus weighed her words. "So what now? You want my forgiveness? An easy fix?" She shook her head, tears glistening at the corners of her eyes. "No, I know I don't deserve that. I just want to learn. I want to change, and if there's any way I can make amends, I'm willing to do the work." Marcus felt a pang of sympathy, but it was tangled with the memory of how she had treated him, the humiliation and anger he had suppressed. "It's not easy, Vanessa. Change isn't just about saying you're sorry." "I know," she whispered, wiping her eyes. "I'm prepared to do whatever it takes." A thought crossed Marcus's mind. If she was serious, if she genuinely wanted to change, then perhaps this could be an opportunity. "All right," he said slowly. "If you're really willing, you can start by volunteering with the charity. You'll be working with the veterans and minority-owned businesses, hearing their stories, learning what it means to stand up for something bigger than yourself." Vanessa's eyes widened, and for the first time, a glimmer of hope appeared on her face. I'd be honored." But Marcus wasn't done. "This isn't about earning forgiveness, Vanessa. It's about understanding the impact of your actions and committing to change, no matter how uncomfortable it gets. You'll be working alongside people who have faced real struggles. You'll be learning from them, not the other way around." She nodded earnestly. "I understand." The first few weeks were difficult for Vanessa. She was greeted with suspicion and cold stares by many of the veterans, who had seen the video and knew exactly who she was. Some of them openly challenged her presence. "What's she doing here?" one of them muttered. She's the one who caused all that trouble for Marcus. Marcus watched from a distance, ready to step in if things escalated, but he wanted Vanessa to face the consequences head-on. And to her credit, she didn't back down. She listened, absorbed the criticism, and showed up every day with the same quiet determination. One day, while helping an elderly veteran named Tom set up his new business venture, Vanessa found herself in a deep conversation. Tom, a man in his 70s who had served in 2 wars, didn't sugarcoat his thoughts. "You know, I saw the video," he told her bluntly. "And to be honest, when I heard you were volunteering here, I almost quit." Vanessa's eyes dropped, but she didn't flinch. "I understand. I deserve that." Tom's eyes softened a bit. "But you keep showing up, and I can see you're trying. Maybe there's something to that." Vanessa felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. "Thank you, Tom. I'm here because I want to learn and because I want to do better." From that moment on, Vanessa's presence at the charity began to shift. She wasn't just the woman from the video anymore. She was someone willing to get her hands dirty, someone who genuinely cared. She helped veterans with their applications, worked late nights on business plans, and even started organizing workshops on diversity and inclusion, using her own story as a cautionary tale. The charity's programs began to flourish, and with Vanessa's help, they expanded their outreach to more communities. Marcus saw her growth and couldn't help but feel a sense of cautious optimism. Perhaps she really was changing. But just as things seemed to be improving, another unexpected twist emerged. One morning, Robert called Marcus into his office, his face serious. "We've got a problem," he said, handing Marcus a tablet. On the screen was a news article. Former marketing executive who abused black veteran now working with same charity. Is it a PR stunt? The article questioned the motives behind Vanessa's involvement, speculating that the charity was using her to gain publicity. It painted her efforts as insincere and accused the organization of exploiting the situation. Marcus felt his blood boil. "This is ridiculous. She's been working hard and we've been nothing but transparent." Robert nodded, his expression grim. "I know, but this is the media. They love a scandal, and they're twisting it." Marcus clenched his fists. "What do? We need to address it head-on. I'm thinking of organizing a live event, a town hall meeting where we let the veterans, business owners, and Vanessa herself speak, show the real story." Marcus's eyes flashed with determination. "Let's do it." The night of the event, the room was packed. Cameras from multiple news stations set up at the back, while veterans, volunteers, and members of the community filled every seat. Marcus stepped up to the podium, feeling the weight of the moment. He spoke about the charity's mission, the work they had done, and the lives they had changed. Then he invited Vanessa to speak. As Vanessa took the stage, there was a noticeable tension in the air. She paused, taking a deep breath before speaking. "I know many of you don't trust me," she began, her voice shaky but honest. "And I understand why. What I did was wrong. I hurt someone who had done nothing but serve his country." The audience was silent, watching her intently. "But I'm not here to make excuses," she continued. "I'm here because I want to change. I want to learn, and I want to do better. This experience has been humbling, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to work alongside the veterans and business owners who have taught me so much." As she finished, there was a moment of silence before Tom, the elderly veteran, stood up. "She's telling the truth," he said, his voice carrying through the hall. "I've seen her put in the work, and I've seen her change." One by one, other veterans stood up. Some shared stories of how Vanessa had helped them. Others spoke cautiously, admitting they were initially skeptical but had seen genuine effort from her. The room's atmosphere shifted, a mix of tension and hope as their testimonies unfolded. Marcus watched, feeling the pulse of the crowd. He knew this was a pivotal moment, not just for Vanessa, but for everyone in that room. Then, a younger veteran named Ethan, who had been silent throughout the evening, raised his hand. The room hushed as he stood, his gaze fixed on Vanessa. "I'm not here to sugarcoat things," he began, his voice firm. "When I saw the video, I was angry. Angry because I faced that same kind of prejudice, and seeing it happen to Marcus, someone who's sacrificed so much for this country, felt like a punch in the gut." The audience murmured, a wave of agreement rippling through the room. Vanessa's eyes dropped to the floor, her hands clasped tightly. But, Ethan continued, his voice softening, I've also seen how hard she's been working. She didn't just show up to check off a box. She's here, day in and day out. And that means something. We all have a choice. Stay bitter or give people a chance to grow. Vanessa's eyes welled with tears, and the room fell silent. Marcus felt the weight of the moment, realizing that Ethan's words carried the potential to shift the entire narrative. Just as the tension seemed to peak, a surprise guest entered the room. Marcus turned, and his eyes widened when he saw who it was. Sarah, Vanessa's former boss, the CEO of the marketing firm that had fired her. Dressed in a simple blazer, her expression was unreadable as she made her way to the front. The room buzzed with whispers, reporters adjusting their cameras to capture the unexpected development. May I speak? Sarah asked, her voice carrying an authority that commanded attention. The crowd stilled as she took the microphone. I know I'm not who you expected to see here tonight, and I certainly didn't expect to be standing here in front of you all. But I felt it was important to share what I know. Vanessa's face paled, and Marcus watched her carefully, his own emotions mixed. He wasn't sure if Sarah's presence was a good sign or if it would unravel all the progress Vanessa had made. When Vanessa worked for me, she was one of my top executives, Sarah began, her gaze moving from the crowd to Vanessa. But I was quick to fire her when the video surfaced, and I thought it was the right thing to do at the time. I believed that distancing myself and the company from her was the only way to handle the situation. She paused, a look of reflection crossing her face. But as the weeks passed, I realized that simply cutting her off wasn't enough. It was, in some ways, the easy way out. And the truth is, that video showed just one moment. It didn't show everything she's been capable of, good and bad. Vanessa's eyes met Sarah's, filled with a mix of gratitude and shame. I know the person you saw in that video isn't the person you want to be known as, Sarah continued. And I'm here tonight because I've been watching from afar, and I can see that you're trying to change. The crowd shifted, sensing that something was building. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. Sarah's tone softened as she addressed the room. It's easy to cancel someone, to write them off when they make a mistake. But real growth, real change, happens when we hold each other accountable and give people a chance to redeem themselves. She paused, then added, Vanessa has been through a lot. She's faced consequences, and she's made the effort to rebuild, brick by brick, even when it would have been easier to disappear. Sarah's eyes locked with Vanessa's. And if she's willing to continue down this path, then maybe, just maybe, we should let her. The silence that followed was thick, but it was no longer tense. It was contemplative. Sarah's words hung in the air, and the weight of her statement seemed to pull everyone's emotions to the surface. Vanessa, now openly crying, took the microphone again. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm asking for the chance to keep proving myself. I've learned so much from each of you, more than I ever did in my entire career, and I promise I'll keep working to be better. As she finished, a voice from the back shouted, Actions speak louder than words, lady. Laughter rippled through the crowd, breaking the tension. Vanessa smiled through her tears, nodding. I know, and I'm here to prove it, one step at a time. The event ended with a round of applause, and Marcus felt a sense of relief mixed with hope. It wasn't a victory, but it was a step, a small, meaningful step. As people began to disperse, Robert pulled Marcus aside, a knowing smile on his face. You did good tonight, he said. It wasn't just me, Marcus replied, glancing at Vanessa, who was now surrounded by veterans who, for the first time, seemed willing to talk to her openly. She's trying. I hope it's real. Robert chuckled, a glint of humor in his eyes. Well, it's up to all of us to keep her on that path. Over the next few months, the charity's work continued to grow. Vanessa became a regular fixture, not just as a volunteer, but as a spokesperson for the diversity and inclusion programs they were implementing. She spoke at events, sharing her own journey of redemption and learning, and her presence began to inspire others who had made mistakes to own up and seek change. But not everything went smoothly. One evening, as Marcus was closing up the charity's office, he received a phone call from a blocked number. The voice on the other end was agitated. You think you're making a difference, Marcus? All you're doing is helping these people save face. People like her don't change. Marcus paused, his instincts sharp. "Who is this?" The voice laughed, cold and dismissive. "Someone who knows the truth. And if you think you're going to turn Vanessa into some kind of hero, you're wasting your time." The call ended abruptly, leaving Marcus with a lingering sense of unease. He knew not everyone was supportive of Vanessa's transformation. But this was different. It felt personal, almost like a warning. He told Robert about the call the next day, and they agreed to keep an eye out for any unusual activity. A week later, while Marcus and Vanessa were co-leading a workshop for a group of young entrepreneurs, someone in the audience stood up. A man in his early 30s, dressed in a sharp suit, smirked as he spoke. "Vanessa, isn't it convenient that you're all about redemption now that your reputation is ruined?" The room tensed, the air heavy with anticipation. Marcus glanced at Vanessa, who visibly stiffened but took a deep breath. "I understand why you feel that way," she said calmly. "I made mistakes, and I'm not here to pretend I didn't, but I'm committed to changing and learning." The man scoffed. "And we're all just supposed to believe that?" Before Vanessa could respond, Marcus stepped forward, his eyes locked on the man. "This isn't about convincing you or anyone else. It's about doing the work, day in and day out, regardless of who believes it." The man's smirk faded, replaced by a look of irritation. "We'll see how long that lasts." He turned and walked out, leaving a murmur of whispers behind. After the workshop, Vanessa approached Marcus, her expression a mix of frustration and resolve. "I know there will always be people who doubt me, but I'm not going to let them get to me." Marcus nodded. "It's not about them, Vanessa. It's about you, and you're doing the right thing." But as the days went by, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something more was at play. The mysterious call, the man's pointed confrontation, everything felt connected, like pieces of a puzzle he couldn't yet see. Determined to get to the bottom of it, Marcus started looking into Vanessa's past, digging deeper into her history with the marketing firm and the people she had worked with. What he found was unexpected. Vanessa's firing had not only been a public relations move for the company, but also a means to cover up something bigger. As Marcus uncovered old documents and emails, a pattern emerged, one that pointed to Vanessa's firm having ties to discriminatory hiring practices that had been quietly swept under the rug. And Vanessa, whether knowingly or not, had been involved. He knew he had to confront her with what he'd found. But this time, the stakes were higher. The story was no longer just about one woman's redemption. It was tied to a larger systemic issue, one that could threaten everything they had worked for. Just as Marcus prepared to meet Vanessa to discuss the revelations, his phone buzzed again, another call from a blocked number. He hesitated but answered, "Hello?" The voice was the same, cold and taunting. "You're digging into things you shouldn't, Marcus. If you don't want to destroy everything you've built, you'll back off." Marcus's heart pounded, the tension in his chest tightening. "Who are you?" The line went dead. He stood there, gripping the phone, knowing that this was far from over. The story was unraveling in ways he hadn't anticipated, and he was determined to see it through, no matter the cost. The stakes had never been higher, and as he prepared to confront Vanessa with the truth, he knew the path ahead would be more complicated than either of them could have imagined. As Marcus stood there, the dead phone line buzzing in his ear, he felt the weight of the situation intensifying. This was no longer just about Vanessa's personal growth and redemption. It was becoming something much more sinister. The mysterious threats, the tangled web of her past, and the revelations he'd uncovered pointed to something deeper, something systemic. He couldn't back down now, no matter the risks. The next morning, Marcus met with Robert at a quiet diner, the kind of place where no one would eavesdrop. The air smelled of fresh coffee and sizzling bacon, but Marcus had no appetite. His mind was racing. "Robert," Marcus began, his voice low but urgent, "there's something you need to know. I dug into Vanessa's past with her old company, and I found some things. Bad things." Robert raised an eyebrow, leaning in. "What are we talking about here?" "Discriminatory hiring practices, covered-up lawsuits. Vanessa may not have been directly responsible, but she was part of it, even if she didn't know it. And someone doesn't want us finding out more." Marcus handed Robert the folder of documents he had uncovered. As Robert flipped through the pages, his face darkened. "This is serious," he muttered. "If this gets out, it could bring down more than just her old company. We're talking about people with power, connections." Marcus nodded. "And that's why I think those calls I've been getting aren't just idle threats. They want us to stop digging." Robert leaned back in his seat, eyes scanning the diner as if expecting someone to be watching. "So what's the play? You gonna confront Vanessa?" Marcus exhaled, the decision heavy on his shoulders. "I have to, but it's more complicated now. If she's involved, even unknowingly, it could undermine everything we've been working for. But if she's willing to face it head-on, it could be her final step toward true redemption." Robert looked at Marcus with concern. "And if she's not willing? If she's been hiding this all along?" Marcus hesitated. "Then we'll have to decide how far we're willing to go, but I won't let them scare me off." That afternoon, Marcus met Vanessa in the charity's office, a somber expression on his face as he closed the door behind him. Vanessa looked up from her desk, sensing the shift in his energy immediately. "What's going on, Marcus? You look tense." Marcus placed the folder on her desk and sat across from her. "Vanessa, we need to talk." Her eyes flickered with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. "What is it?" "I've been looking into your old company," Marcus began slowly, watching her carefully for any signs of recognition or guilt. "I found evidence of discriminatory practices, hiring policies that were racially biased, lawsuits that were settled quietly to avoid bad press. I don't know how much you knew, but you were part of that company." Vanessa's face paled. Her hands instinctively moved to the folder, flipping through the pages with shaky fingers. Marcus, I had no idea." "Didn't you?" Marcus asked, his voice firm but not accusatory. "You were an executive there, Vanessa. Whether you knew or not, you were part of it. And now we're getting threats. People don't want this to come out." Vanessa's eyes widened in disbelief, and tears welled at the corners. "No, I swear, Marcus, I never knew. I never would have been part of something like that." For a moment, Marcus said nothing, letting her words sink in. He wanted to believe her. He could see the pain and fear in her eyes, but this wasn't just about intentions anymore. It was about truth. "Vanessa," he said quietly, "whether you knew or not, you need to make a choice. You can either confront this with us, be transparent, and help us expose what's happening, or you can walk away. But if you walk away now, this will come out eventually, and it'll destroy everything we've built here." Vanessa wiped away a tear, her voice trembling. "I didn't come this far just to hide again, Marcus. I'm not that person anymore. I'll face whatever I need to, but please believe me. I didn't know." Marcus's gaze softened slightly. "I want to believe you, and I think you're ready to fight this, but it's not going to be easy." Vanessa nodded, her resolve hardening. "I'll do whatever it takes. We have to expose the truth, no matter the cost." Together, they made a plan to publicly address the information Marcus had uncovered. But just as they began preparing for the fallout, the situation took an unexpected and dangerous turn. Late one night, as Marcus was leaving the charity's office, a dark car pulled up beside him. Before he could react, two men stepped out, their faces shadowed by the dim streetlight. "Mr. Marcus," one of them said with a cold smile, "you've been poking your nose where it doesn't belong." Marcus's heart pounded in his chest, but he stood his ground. "What do you want?" The second man, taller and more menacing, stepped closer, his voice low and threatening. "This is your last warning. Drop the investigation. Stop digging into Vanessa's old company. If you don't, we'll make sure you regret it." Marcus clenched his fists, his instincts screaming to fight, but he knew he had to stay calm. "You think you can scare me off? You think I'm just gonna let you get away with this?" The taller man smirked, his eyes gleaming with malice. "You're just one man, Marcus. You might want to think about what you're risking. People have a lot to lose if you keep this up." As the two men retreated back into the car and sped off, Marcus stood there, breathing hard. The message was clear. This wasn't just about Vanessa anymore. It was about something much bigger. And the stakes had just been raised. The next morning, Marcus shared the encounter with Robert and Vanessa. Vanessa, pale and shaken, sat in silence for a long time before speaking. "This is my fault," she whispered. "I brought this to your doorstep." Marcus shook his head. "No, Vanessa. This isn't just about you anymore. This is about exposing the truth. These people are dangerous, but they're also afraid. That's why they're trying to intimidate us. Robert, who had been listening quietly, finally spoke. We need to be smart about this. If we go public with what we know, we'll have to be prepared for everything they throw at us. Legal battles, media attacks, maybe worse. Vanessa's eyes were filled with fear, but she straightened her shoulders and took a deep breath. I'm not running anymore. Whatever happens, I'm facing it. A few days later, they held a press conference to publicly reveal the information they had uncovered about Vanessa's old company. The room was packed with reporters, cameras flashing, and murmurs of anticipation filled the air. Vanessa, standing beside Marcus and Robert, took a deep breath before stepping up to the podium. I'm here today, she began, her voice steady but emotional, because it's time for the truth to come out. I worked for a company that engaged in discriminatory practices that I was unaware of at the time, but that I now understand were deeply wrong. The reporters leaned in, hanging on her every word. I take full responsibility for being part of a system that allowed this to happen. I'm not here to make excuses, but I am here to help expose the truth and to make amends in any way I can. Marcus stood beside her, his presence a quiet show of solidarity, as Vanessa laid bare the secrets of her former life. The press conference sent shockwaves through the business community, and within hours, news outlets were reporting on the scandal. But that wasn't the end of it. As they left the conference, Marcus's phone buzzed again, a new text message from an unknown number. It read, "You've gone too far. Now it's personal." The air felt thick with tension, and Marcus's pulse quickened. Whoever was behind these threats wasn't backing down, and things were about to get even more dangerous. The path ahead was riddled with uncertainty, but Marcus, Vanessa, and Robert were in too deep now. There was no turning back. The battle had only just begun. The text message hung in Marcus's mind like a shadow, an ominous reminder that the stakes were higher than ever. As he read the words again, "You've gone too far. Now it's personal," he felt a chill run down his spine. He glanced at Vanessa, who was beside him in the car, her eyes still red from the emotional press conference. She noticed the shift in his expression and leaned in, her voice hushed. "Marcus, what's wrong?" He hesitated for a moment, then handed her the phone. She read the message, and her face went pale. "They're not backing down, are they?" "No," he said, his jaw tightening. "And they're going to come at us harder now." The following days were a whirlwind. The press conference had ignited a media frenzy. News stations replayed clips of Vanessa's speech, while pundits debated whether she was a brave whistleblower or a pawn trying to save her own image. Social media was ablaze with opinions, some supportive and others skeptical. The charity received countless calls, some offering support, others threatening legal action or worse. One evening, as Marcus was reviewing documents with Robert in the charity's office, they heard a loud crash outside. They rushed to the window and saw that the front of the building had been vandalized. Graffiti covered the walls, and the words "traitor" and "liar" were sprayed in bold letters. "Damn it," Robert muttered. "They're escalating." Marcus clenched his fists. "We knew they wouldn't take this lying down, but it's getting out of control." The police were called, but there was little they could do. As Marcus and Robert surveyed the damage, Vanessa arrived, her face a mask of worry. "Are you guys okay?" she asked, her voice trembling. "We're fine," Marcus assured her, but his eyes darkened. "But it's clear now, they're not just trying to scare us. They want to ruin us." Robert, ever the strategist, turned to them both. "We need to be smart about this. We're dealing with people who have resources and connections, but if they're resorting to these kinds of tactics, it means they're afraid." Vanessa nodded, her eyes determined. "We keep pushing. We've come too far to stop now." The trio doubled down on their efforts, continuing to expose the truth behind the discriminatory practices of Vanessa's former company. They reached out to former employees who had been affected, giving them a platform to share their stories. The media's interest grew, and soon, more and more voices joined the chorus demanding justice. But amidst the growing support, there were also complications. The threats intensified. Marcus began receiving anonymous packages at his home, each one containing ominous notes like, "You're being watched," or "This isn't over." One night, as he was heading to his car after another late shift at the charity, he noticed the glint of something under his vehicle. His instincts kicked in, and he stepped back, his heart racing. "Robert," he shouted, backing away. Robert emerged from the building, his eyes widening as he spotted the device. "Call the bomb squad, now." The authorities arrived, confirming Marcus's worst fears. A small but functional explosive had been planted under his car. It was a clear message: back off or face the consequences. As Marcus and Robert stood behind the police tape, Vanessa arrived, her face stricken with horror. "Oh my God, Marcus, are you okay?" "I'm fine," he assured her, though his voice was tight. "But this is serious. These people are willing to do whatever it takes to silence us." For the first time since the ordeal began, Marcus saw a flicker of doubt in Vanessa's eyes. "Maybe we're putting too many people at risk." Marcus shook his head, his expression resolute. "No, this isn't just about us anymore. We have to keep going." Robert nodded. "They're trying to scare us because they know we're close, but we've got to be smart about our next move." The situation reached a boiling point a week later when Vanessa received a lawsuit notice from her former company. They accused her of slander, claiming she was spreading false information to damage their reputation. The lawsuit demanded an exorbitant sum in damages, a move clearly intended to intimidate her. Vanessa's hands shook as she held the papers. "They're trying to bankrupt me. They know I can't fight this." Marcus placed a hand on her shoulder. "We'll fight it together. We have evidence, we have witnesses. They can't scare us into silence." But behind his words, Marcus felt the weight of the battle they were waging. The legal system was slow, and the people they were up against had money, lawyers, and influence. They needed something stronger, something that would shift the narrative and bring undeniable proof into the light. One evening, while combing through the mountain of documents they had collected, Marcus stumbled upon an old email thread buried deep in the archives. It was between Vanessa's former boss and a high-ranking executive discussing the very practices they were trying to expose. But there was something more, a name that kept appearing: Jared Green. "Robert, look at this," Marcus said, his voice tense. "This guy, Jared Green, he's not just any executive. He's been pulling the strings behind everything, and it looks like he's been involved in some shady deals that go way beyond hiring practices." Robert's eyes narrowed as he scanned the emails. "This is it. This is the smoking gun we need. If we can tie him directly to the threats and expose these deals, we'll have them cornered." Vanessa, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. "Jared Green, I remember him. He was always the shadow figure behind the scenes, but he had power, a lot of it. If he's the one behind all of this, we're in even deeper than I thought." Marcus's mind raced. "We need to find more on him, something that connects him to these threats." Over the next few days, the trio worked tirelessly, connecting the dots and piecing together the puzzle that was Jared Green's network of influence. They uncovered offshore accounts, hidden transactions, and even connections to political figures. But just as they were closing in on the final pieces, another blow hit them hard. The charity's bank accounts were suddenly frozen. Without warning, they found themselves unable to access the funds needed to continue their work or pay for legal fees. Robert received a notice from the bank, citing suspicious activity and compliance checks. It was clear Jared Green's reach extended far, and he was leveraging every resource he had to shut them down. Vanessa felt the weight of it all crashing down. "Marcus, what do we do? They're crippling us." Marcus, though worn and tired, refused to waver. "They're trying to starve us out, but we still have something they can't take: people. We've built trust, and the community is behind us. It's time we take this fight to them directly." Robert raised an eyebrow. "What are you thinking?" Marcus's eyes hardened with determination. "We need to confront Jared Green himself, publicly. If we can get him to slip up, or if we can catch him in a lie, the media will do the rest." Vanessa's face brightened with a glimmer of hope. "How do we do that?" "We'll organize a live debate," Marcus proposed. "We invite him, under the guise of giving him a chance to clear his name and defend his company's practices. But we use everything we have: documents, testimonies, everything we've found during the broadcast. We catch him in the spotlight." The plan was bold, risky, and would leave them vulnerable. But it was the best shot they had. The day of the live event arrived. They booked a large auditorium, and the media presence was intense. Cameras lined the walls, and reporters whispered amongst themselves, sensing a showdown. Jared Green, confident and composed, entered with his entourage, his eyes cold as he scanned the room. Vanessa and Marcus took their places on stage, with Robert at their side. The moderator introduced the event, setting the stage for what would be a public confrontation. The tension was electric. As the debate began, Marcus wasted no time. "Mr. Green, your company has been accused of systemic discrimination. We have evidence that suggests you not only knew about it but actively participated in covering it up." Jared smiled, a practiced grin that didn't reach his eyes. "These are baseless accusations, Mr. Marcus. And as for Miss Vanessa here, well, she's just a disgruntled former employee trying to tarnish our reputation." Vanessa's fists clenched, but Marcus remained calm. "Is that so? Then how do you explain these emails, Mr. Green?" He projected the emails onto the screen, highlighting Green's name and his involvement. The room hushed, cameras zooming in on Jared's face. For a split second, a flash of panic crossed his eyes, but he quickly masked it. Those could be fakes. Anyone could have doctored those. But Marcus wasn't done. "And how about these financial records? Offshore accounts linked to your name, with transactions tied to known political figures. Can you explain that?" Jared's composure wavered, his confident mask cracking. The reporters began murmuring, some frantically typing notes, others leaning forward with anticipation. Vanessa, sensing the shift, seized her moment. "You've been manipulating people for years, Jared. This isn't just about one company. This is about a system you've built. A system that's hurting real people." Jared's face twisted in anger. "You don't know what you're talking about." Suddenly, one of the reporters, who had been quietly observing, stood up. "Actually, I do." She revealed herself as an investigative journalist who had been tracking Green's dealings for years. "And I've got the proof to back it up." Jared's eyes widened as the journalist pulled out her own stack of documents, flashing them for the cameras to capture. The audience gasped, and the tension reached its peak. Marcus felt the shift. The tide was turning, and Jared Green was cornered. But the battle was far from over. Jared's confident facade crumbled before everyone's eyes. The journalist's intervention was unexpected, and it caught him off guard. He stood there, caught in the harsh glare of the cameras, his mind racing as he tried to regain control of the narrative. The crowd watched in silence, captivated by the unfolding drama. Marcus seized the moment. "Mr. Green, you've been playing a dangerous game for years, exploiting loopholes, manipulating systems, and targeting people who don't have the resources to fight back. But today, it ends." Jared's eyes darted from side to side, looking for an escape. He glanced at his entourage, but they hesitated, clearly unsettled by the damning evidence displayed on the screen and the journalist's presence. Vanessa, standing beside Marcus, could feel the shift. She saw the crowd's expressions change, from skepticism to sympathy, from indifference to anger. The truth was finally resonating. Then, in a move that caught everyone by surprise, Jared snapped. "You think you can destroy me?" he hissed, his voice low but laced with fury. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." The audience gasped, sensing the venom in his words. He pointed at Marcus and Vanessa. "These people, these so-called heroes, they're just desperate. They want to tear down everything I've built because they can't handle the truth." The moderator tried to regain control. "Mr. Green, please, no." Jared shouted, his voice echoing through the auditorium. "This isn't about justice or truth, it's about revenge." He turned his glare to Vanessa. "You're nothing but a failed executive, and you're using this as your comeback story. Well, guess what? No one's buying it." Vanessa felt the sting of his words, but she stood firm. "I'm not here for revenge, Jared. I'm here to make things right. For the people you've wronged." Jared sneered. "Spare me the martyr act. You were happy to play along when it suited you." The tension in the room was palpable. Marcus knew they were walking a tightrope, but he wasn't going to let Jared shift the narrative. He took a deep breath and calmly said, "If you're so sure of your innocence, why don't you open up your records for a full investigation? Why not let the public see everything? Every deal, every transaction?" Jared's face twitched. For a brief second, he was silent, and the entire room held its breath, waiting for his response. Then, in a calculated move, he forced a smile, trying to appear confident again. "Fine. I've got nothing to hide." The journalist, quick to capitalize on the moment, jumped in. "Excellent, Mr. Green. We'll arrange a team of auditors and legal experts to begin the review immediately. Jared's eyes darkened. He knew he had been outmaneuvered, but he wasn't going down without a fight. "This isn't over," he muttered, turning sharply and storming off the stage, his entourage scrambling to follow. The crowd erupted. Some cheered, others shouted questions, while reporters frantically typed updates. Marcus and Vanessa exchanged a look, a silent acknowledgement that they had scored a major victory. But the battle was still ongoing. Later that night, as the trio regrouped at the charity's office, the atmosphere was electric. Robert slapped Marcus on the back, a grin on his face. "You played that perfectly. We got him right where we want him." Vanessa, though relieved, still looked troubled. "He's dangerous, Marcus. You saw it in his eyes. He's not done yet, and if he feels cornered—" "I know," Marcus replied, his tone serious. "He'll do everything he can to protect himself, but we've got the public on our side now, and that's a powerful force." Suddenly, Robert's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and frowned. "It's the journalist, Maria. She says we need to meet, and it's urgent." Marcus exchanged a glance with Vanessa. "Let's go." They arrived at a small cafe downtown, its dim lights and quiet ambiance a stark contrast to the tension in the air. Maria was already waiting, her face tight with worry. As they sat down, she leaned in, her voice barely above a whisper. "I found something bigger than we anticipated." Marcus's eyes narrowed. "What is it?" Maria pulled out a folder, her fingers trembling slightly. "Jared Green's been involved in more than just discriminatory hiring practices. He's been funneling money into offshore accounts, but not just for his own profit. He's been paying off officials, police, even judges. It's a network of corruption that goes deep." Vanessa's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God, it's worse than we thought." Maria nodded. "It's a web of deceit, and if we pull on the wrong thread, everything could unravel, including us." Marcus felt the weight of her words. "So what's the play?" Maria took a deep breath. "We need to expose this, but we have to be smart. If we go public with this information too soon, he'll come after us with everything he's got. We need more evidence, something irrefutable." Vanessa's eyes were fierce. "Whatever it takes, I'm in." Marcus nodded in agreement. "We'll keep digging, but we have to be prepared. If this goes wrong, it could put all of us and the charity in serious danger." Over the next few weeks, the intensity escalated. Marcus, Vanessa, Robert, and Maria worked tirelessly, uncovering more links in Jared's corrupt network. They interviewed whistleblowers, combed through financial records, and connected with local activists who had been silenced by the system. It was a risky endeavor, and the threats continued to mount. One night, as Marcus and Vanessa returned to the charity's office after a long day of research, they found the door ajar. Marcus instinctively put out a hand to stop Vanessa. "Wait here." He crept forward, pushing the door open cautiously. The office was dark, but he could see that it had been ransacked. Papers were strewn across the floor, desks overturned, computers smashed. His heart pounded as he heard a faint rustle from the corner. "Who's there?" he called, his voice steady but his body tense. A shadow moved, and a man stepped out from the darkness, his face partially obscured by a hood. "Marcus Thompson," he said slowly, his voice cold and measured. "You should have stayed out of this." Marcus's eyes flicked to Vanessa, who was watching from the doorway, her eyes wide with fear. "What do you want?" he demanded. The man chuckled. "It's not about what I want. It's about what Mr. Green wants, and he wants you to back off, now." Vanessa, despite the fear etched on her face, stepped forward. "We're not backing down," she said firmly. "Tell Jared he can't intimidate us." The man's smile vanished, and his eyes hardened. "You've made a mistake." He reached into his pocket, and for a split second Marcus's instincts flared. But instead of a weapon, the man pulled out a USB drive. He tossed it onto the floor at Marcus's feet. "Consider this a warning. You have one last chance." With that, he turned and walked out, disappearing into the night. Vanessa rushed over, her eyes on the USB drive. "What do you think it is?" Marcus picked it up, his mind racing. Only one way to find out. They plugged the drive into a secure computer, and what they found was a chilling collection of surveillance footage. Images of Marcus's home, the charity's office, and even footage of Vanessa and Robert meeting privately. The message was clear. Jared's network had been watching them, tracking their every move. Vanessa's voice was shaky. "They know everything." Marcus's face was grim. "We're being watched, and they're letting us know they're always one step ahead." Robert entered the room, having just returned from a meeting. "What's going on?" he asked, noticing their expressions. Marcus showed him the footage. "They're tightening the noose." But instead of looking defeated, Robert's eyes lit up with a fierce determination. "If they're watching us this closely, they're scared. And that's our advantage." "That's our advantage." Vanessa frowned. "How is that an advantage?" "Because they think intimidation will make us stop," Robert explained. "But what they don't realize is that the more they push, the closer we get. They've given us everything we need, proof of surveillance, intimidation tactics. All we have to do is connect it back to Jared." Marcus's eyes brightened with resolve. "We'll turn their own game against them." The trio spent the next few days carefully planning their next move. They began feeding false information through their conversations, planting seeds that would lead Jared's network into traps. Maria continued to investigate from behind the scenes, compiling the final pieces of evidence needed to expose Jared's corrupt empire. Finally, they were ready. They arranged a second live event, a carefully orchestrated reveal that would catch Jared and his associates off guard. This time, they invited high-profile journalists, legal experts, and even local officials. If they were going to bring him down, they needed the world to watch. As the event began, Marcus took the stage, his heart pounding but his resolve unshaken. He knew they were walking into the lion's den, but he also knew they were prepared. Vanessa stood beside him, her face a mask of determination, while Robert and Maria coordinated from the sidelines. The lights dimmed and the room went silent. Marcus leaned into the microphone, ready to unveil the truth that would change everything. The stakes had never been higher. The battle was about to reach its climax, and there was no turning back. As the spotlight focused on Marcus, he felt the weight of every eye in the room. This wasn't just another event. This was the showdown that could either dismantle Jared Green's empire or destroy everything Marcus, Vanessa, Robert, and Maria had fought for. The air was thick with anticipation, the audience silent, their gazes sharp and expectant. Marcus took a deep breath, steadying himself before he began. "Tonight, we're not just here to tell a story," Marcus said, his voice echoing through the packed auditorium. "We're here to reveal the truth. A truth that has been hidden for too long, manipulated by people who think they're untouchable." He paused, scanning the faces in the crowd. He saw curiosity, suspicion, and some who were clearly there to watch a spectacle. "We have evidence that a network of corruption has operated in the shadows for years, affecting not just businesses, but individuals, veterans, families, and communities. It's time for those responsible to be held accountable." The screen behind Marcus flickered to life, showing documents, emails, and financial transactions that connected Jared Green's company to corrupt officials, bribery, and illegal deals. The audience gasped, and the reporter's cameras zoomed in, capturing every detail. Vanessa stepped forward, her expression serious but resolute. "I worked for this company," she said. "I was part of it, unknowingly. And now, I stand here to expose what they did, and what I was unknowingly complicit in." She pointed to the screen. "These documents prove how Jared Green and his associates manipulated the system, exploiting loopholes and targeting people without power or resources." The crowd murmured, and Marcus could see the shift in their faces. Some leaning forward, captivated, others whispering to their neighbors, the realization of the truth dawning. Suddenly, from the back of the room, a loud voice interrupted the presentation. "This is all fabricated." Jared Green himself stood, flanked by several lawyers and bodyguards. The room fell silent as he made his way to the front, his eyes locked on Marcus and Vanessa. "You think you can ruin me with these lies?" Marcus's heart raced, but he held his ground. "These aren't lies, Mr. Green. Everything here is documented. Your emails, your financial transactions, even the surveillance footage of you instructing your employees to target specific individuals." Jared's eyes flashed, but he forced a smile, one that didn't reach his eyes. "And what makes you think anyone will believe you? You're just desperate people looking for revenge." The tension in the room was electric, the audience watching the confrontation unfold. But Marcus had anticipated this. "I knew you'd deny it, Jared," he said calmly. "That's why we've brought more than just documents tonight." On cue, the doors at the back of the auditorium opened, and in walked several former employees and whistleblowers from Jared's company. They were joined by the investigative journalist Maria had brought along, armed with her own set of evidence. The crowd buzzed with excitement and disbelief as the new witnesses approached the stage. "This is absurd," Jared shouted, his composure finally cracking as the camera zoomed in on his angry, flushed face. "You're staging this, paying people off." Marcus remained calm, gesturing for the witnesses to come forward. "These are real people, Jared. People you've exploited, threatened, and silenced for years. And tonight, they get to speak." The first whistleblower, a woman named Carla who had worked in Jared's financial division, took the microphone. "I was part of his team," she began, her voice steady despite the nervousness in her eyes. "I was instructed to hide transactions, funnel money into offshore accounts, and delete files that could implicate the higher-ups." Another former employee, a young man named Alex, stepped up. "I was told to make sure certain people never got hired, based solely on their background or race. I stayed quiet because I needed the job, but I knew it was wrong." As one by one the whistleblowers spoke, the atmosphere in the room shifted dramatically. The audience listened intently, many now looking at Jared with disgust and disbelief. The walls were closing in on him. But then, in a move that caught even Marcus off guard, Jared's lawyer stepped forward, holding up a thick file. "This is a smear campaign," the lawyer declared. "My client has complied with every regulation, and we have evidence that these so-called whistleblowers were terminated for misconduct. You're all being manipulated by a disgruntled ex-employee and a desperate man trying to save his reputation." Vanessa felt her pulse quicken. She turned to Marcus, her eyes searching his. "Do we have enough to counter this?" Marcus gave her a reassuring nod. "We do." He signaled to Robert, who began playing a video on the screen. It was footage of Jared Green himself, recorded from one of his secret meetings that Maria had managed to obtain. In the video, Jared was seen instructing a group of men to intimidate whistleblowers and falsify documents to cover up their activities. The room erupted in gasps and murmurs as the truth was laid bare. Jared's face twisted in rage as he watched the incriminating video play, his lawyers scrambling to stop the broadcast. "Turn it off," he bellowed, but it was too late. The damage was done. Reporters stood up, firing questions at Jared, while others frantically took notes, their eyes gleaming with the promise of breaking the story wide open. Marcus felt a surge of hope. This was the breakthrough they needed. But Jared wasn't finished. Desperation etched across his face. He turned to the crowd, trying to rally the last of his supporters. "You think this is justice?" he shouted. "This is a setup, a way to bring down successful people who've worked hard. They're just jealous." The crowd, however, wasn't buying it. The proof was undeniable, and the witnesses' testimonies had hit home. People began shouting back, calling for Jared's arrest, demanding accountability. The energy in the room reached a fever pitch. Suddenly, amidst the chaos, someone threw an object at the stage. It narrowly missed Jared, crashing onto the floor. Security guards rushed in, trying to control the situation as the crowd's anger boiled over. Marcus and Vanessa remained calm, standing firm. "This isn't about revenge," Marcus called out, addressing the room. "This is about justice. For every person Jared Green's network has hurt, exploited, or silenced. We are here to make sure that no one else suffers because of his greed." Jared, sensing that he had lost, turned on his heel, pushing past the crowd as his security tried to clear a path. Reporters followed, their cameras capturing every moment as he was escorted out of the building. His lawyer, seeing the tide had turned, quickly exited as well, abandoning his client to the mob of journalists. As the crowd slowly calmed, Marcus, Vanessa, and Robert stood together, relief washing over them. The battle had reached its climax, and they had emerged victorious. But just as they thought the dust was settling, Marcus's phone buzzed again. This time, it was Maria. Her voice urgent. "Marcus, you need to get out of there. I've just uncovered something. Jared's network has backup plans, and they're more dangerous than we thought." Marcus's stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "There are others involved, high-ranking officials who are scrambling now that Jared's been exposed. They're going to try and silence anyone who has proof. You, Vanessa, Robert, all of you are targets." Marcus felt a cold wave of dread wash over him. "Where are you?" I'm safe for now, Maria replied, her voice tight. But I've seen the files. There are people watching you, people who don't care about the law. Marcus hung up and turned to Vanessa and Robert. We've got to move, now. As they rushed to the exit, the reality of the situation sank in. They had exposed Jared Green, but the battle wasn't over. The network was bigger and the stakes were higher than they had ever imagined. The race for survival had begun, and Marcus knew they were up against an enemy that wouldn't stop until they were silenced for good. The urgency in Maria's voice sent a shockwave through Marcus, and as they pushed through the crowd, his mind raced. They had uncovered and exposed Jared, but the revelation had only unleashed a bigger threat. Whoever was pulling the strings from behind the scenes was powerful, far more powerful than they had imagined. This wasn't just about Jared Green anymore, it was about survival. As they reached the exit, Vanessa turned to Marcus, her eyes wide with fear. What now? If they know where we are, how do we stay ahead? Robert, always the strategist, quickly ushered them to his car. We need to get off the grid for a while. Maria's right, they'll come after us. We need to regroup and figure out our next move. They drove away, weaving through the city streets with headlights dimmed, trying to disappear into the night. As the city lights blurred past, Marcus's phone buzzed again. He glanced down, half expecting another threat. Instead, it was a message from Maria. Meet me at the safe house. We'll plan from there. Robert navigated through back roads until they reached the outskirts of the city, where the bright lights faded into darkness and the noise of traffic died away. Eventually, they pull up to an old warehouse that looked abandoned, its brick walls covered in graffiti and its windows boarded up. Maria stepped out from the shadows, waving them over. This place is secure, she said, leading them through a hidden door and into a dimly lit room filled with computer equipment and maps plastered on the walls. I've used it for investigations before. No one will find us here. Marcus, Vanessa, and Robert exchanged glances, relieved to have a temporary haven. They gathered around a table, and Maria pulled up a laptop, her fingers flying over the keys. I've found more, she said, her voice tense. Jared's just a piece of the puzzle. The people behind him, the ones financing his operations, are deeply connected. We're talking about politicians, law enforcement, and even international investors. Vanessa's face paled. They'll do anything to protect themselves. Marcus leaned in, his eyes focused on the screen. What do we have on them? Maria brought up a series of encrypted files, each marked with names, dates, and locations. I hacked into a few of Jared's private accounts before he went on the run. These files contain communications between him and some of the higher-ups. They mention bribes, secret meetings, and even strategies to eliminate threats. People who got too close. Robert crossed his arms, his face grim. This is a web of corruption. If we go public with this, we'll be taking down powerful people. People who won't just threaten us, they'll act. Marcus knew he was right. We need more than just these files. We need something that directly ties these people to Jared, something they can't deny. Maria's eyes lit up. I think I know where we can find it. Jared kept a backup server, one that stored all his communications and transactions. It's located in one of his properties, an old estate outside the city. If we can get in, we can download everything. Vanessa frowned. You mean break in? Isn't that risky? Maria nodded. Extremely. But it's our best shot. If we can access the files and get out before anyone realizes, we'll have the leverage we need to bring them down for good. Marcus's mind raced, calculating the risks. We'll need a plan. Robert, can you gather supplies? On it, Robert replied, already moving toward the equipment room. As they prepared for the mission, Marcus caught Vanessa's eye. She seemed distant, her fingers tapping nervously on the table. You okay? He asked, his voice gentle. Vanessa hesitated, then sighed. I'm scared, Marcus. I didn't sign up for this, but now it's too late to back out. Marcus put a hand on her shoulder. I know it's terrifying, but you've come so far, Vanessa. You've faced your past, you've stood up for what's right, and you're stronger than you think. A small smile tugged at her lips and she nodded, steeling herself. Okay, let's do this. That night, they set off toward Jared's estate. The drive was tense. The silence punctuated only by the hum of the engine and the occasional flash of headlights from distant cars. As they neared the location, Robert pulled off the main road, parking in a thicket of trees. The estate loomed in the distance, its silhouette lit by a few dim security lights. "All right," Marcus whispered as they huddled in the shadows. "Maria, you'll handle the security system. Robert and I will enter through the side entrance. Vanessa, stay here and keep watch." Vanessa's eyes flicked with concern. "Be careful." "We will," Marcus promised, giving her a reassuring nod. Maria hacked into the estate's security system, disabling the cameras and unlocking the doors. "You're clear," she whispered through their earpieces. Marcus and Robert moved swiftly, slipping through the side entrance and into the dark corridors of the mansion. The air was heavy, every creak of the floorboards echoing ominously in the silence. They navigated the labyrinth of rooms, guided by Maria's voice in their ears, until they reached the study where the server was hidden. Robert pulled out a small toolkit, carefully bypassing the lock on the server cabinet. "Got it," he murmured, handing Marcus a flash drive. "Download everything." Marcus connected the drive, watching as the files transferred. His eyes scanned the room, every shadow feeling like it could hide an unseen enemy. The seconds felt like hours. Suddenly, Vanessa's voice crackled through the earpiece. "Guys, we've got company. A car just pulled up." Marcus's heart leapt. "How many?" "4. No, 5 men. They're armed." "Damn it," Robert muttered, quickening his pace as he watched the download progress. "We're almost done. Get out of there," Vanessa urged, her voice urgent. Marcus felt the tension building, but he held his ground until the download completed. "Got it," he whispered, pulling the flash drive free. "Let's move." They slipped out of the study, making their way back through the hallways. As they neared the exit, the front door burst open and armed men flooded in. Marcus and Robert ducked behind a column, narrowly avoiding the beams of flashlights scanning the room. "We have to go another way," Marcus whispered. They doubled back, moving through a side corridor. But as they rounded a corner, they nearly collided with 2 guards patrolling the area. Marcus reacted instinctively, grabbing the first guard and disarming him with a swift move, while Robert tackled the second. The scuffle was quick, but the noise attracted attention. "Move!" Marcus hissed as more guards poured in, shouting orders. They sprinted down the hallway, diving into a side room and barricading the door behind them. "Marcus, what's happening?" Vanessa's voice came through, laced with panic. "We're pinned down," Marcus replied, glancing around the room. "We need another exit." Maria's voice crackled through the earpiece. "There's a window on your left. It leads to the garden. Go now." Marcus and Robert smashed the window, climbing through as shouts echoed behind them. They sprinted through the garden, dodging spotlights and weaving through the maze of hedges until they reached the edge of the estate. Vanessa and Maria met them at the tree line, eyes wide with relief. "Are you okay?" Vanessa asked breathlessly. "We're fine," Marcus replied, holding up the flash drive. "And we've got what we need." The group retreated to their car, the tension still palpable. As they sped away from the estate, Maria checked the laptop. "I'm decrypting the files now," she said, her fingers a blur on the keyboard. "This is it. Emails, payments, everything linking Jared and his network to those higher-ups." Vanessa's eyes shone with determination. "We have them." Marcus, feeling the adrenaline subside, finally allowed himself a small smile. "We're going to bring them down." But just as they thought they were in the clear, the headlights of a black SUV appeared in their rearview mirror, gaining on them fast. "We're not alone," Robert said, gripping the wheel tightly. The SUV rammed into the back of their car, sending them skidding. "Hold on," Robert shouted as he swerved, trying to maintain control. As the SUV barreled down on them, headlights flashing and tires screeching, Marcus's heart pounded. The night had become a test of courage and resilience. One final chase for justice, where every choice, every second, mattered. But in the chaos, there was also clarity. They had come too far, fought too hard, to let fear hold them back now. With Robert's expert driving and the team's coordinated efforts, they managed to outmaneuver their pursuers. The SUV swerved violently, spinning out and crashing into a ditch as Marcus and his friends sped away, their breathless relief filling the car. It wasn't the end of their fight, but it was a victory. A moment that signified the power of perseverance and unity. They reached a safe house hours later, bruised but triumphant. Marcus and Vanessa sat together on the porch as the dawn broke, the sky painted in hues of pink and gold. It was a quiet, reflective moment, the air cool and filled with promise. Vanessa looked out, the weight of their journey visible in her eyes. "Do you think we made a difference?" she asked softly, the vulnerability of her question hanging in the air. Marcus, taking a deep breath, nodded. "Yes, I do. We showed the truth, no matter how powerful the opposition, no matter the risks. And in doing that, we gave people the courage to stand up, to fight for what's right." Vanessa's eyes glistened with emotion. "But what if it's not enough?" Marcus smiled, a mix of hope and determination. "It's never about one battle. It's about the small changes that ripple out, the people who see what we've done and decide to fight in their own ways. It's about planting the seed." As they sat there, the sunlight slowly rising, illuminating their tired but resilient faces, there was a sense of peace, a sense that, despite the odds, they had sparked something bigger than themselves. The screen fades to black, and the video transitions to Marcus's voice, addressing the audience directly. "We all face battles in our lives, moments where we're asked to choose between standing up for what's right or walking away. It's never easy, and the consequences can be hard to face, but it's in those moments that we find out who we truly are and what we stand for." A montage of clips from their journey plays: the press conference, the daring mission, the whistleblowers finding their voices, and finally, Marcus and Vanessa watching the dawn together. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of the power each of us holds to make a change, I ask you to share it. Share it with your friends, your family, anyone who might need a reminder that courage, no matter how small, can create waves of change.